Hello everyone, welcome in today's class. Today's class we are going to deal the topic of legal reasoning. The topic is strict and absolute liability in law. As we all know, what is tort? Tort is basically a civil wrong. Tort is a civil wrong. The civil wrong, that means breach of civil duties. That I have already told you about that what is civil duty. Being a person, we have certain right. हमारे पास कुछ rights हैं. We have certain rights. These rights are the duties of others. If someone breaches his duty, so that would be the harm for us. And in that, we have already discussed about legal harm. We have discussed two maxims: injuria sine damnum, damnum sine injuria. That means there should be harm to legal right. Then only a person would be able to get the compensation. And here we are going to have only compensation. We will get compensation for which kind of damage? For unliquidated damage. For unliquidated damage. And the person who commits the wrong is known as tortfeasor. We will be considering him tortfeasor and he would be liable. Somehow, to decide the liability, we have to file the case. We have to file the case. We are filing the case, then we will become plaintiff. And the person against whom the case is filed will become defendant. Will become defendant. So basically, how to determine the liability of the defendant. So today we are going to deal about strict and absolute liability. What is strict liability and what is absolute liability? What is the difference between these two? So basically, you know about general exceptions. There are so many general exceptions to the liability of tort because every civil wrong is not a tort. Every civil wrong is not a tort because like act done in private defense under statutory authority, so many exceptions are there. They will be considered as civil wrong. No, they will be wrong, but they, as per law, they are not either civil wrong. So the person who is filing the complaint will not get the compensation. Will not get the compensation. And the compensation, which kind of compensation will be given? Unliquidated damage. That means the court will determine the amount of. Now we are going to deal with strict liability. What is strict liability? Consider yourself like it is derived from a case Rylands versus Fletcher. Now I don't need to tell you about who is plaintiff and who is defendant. The Ryland is plaintiff and Fletcher is. Yeah, I am keeping you apart from the fact of the case. I am just asking, like, I have brought something on my land and that thing has escaped. Like I have brought crocodile on my land. Here, that is unnatural use of land. I am not supposed to bring that crocodile on my land, but I brought it. And that crocodile put harm to someone, caused harm to someone. He just escaped from my house. So can I deny my liability? The answer would be no. Answer would be no. Similarly, like on my roof, I have just constructed a swimming pool on my roof. And due to that, my neighbor are facing so many problems. Like there is continuous drop of water from their roof because it is just adjacent and connected to my house. So for that problem, I cannot deny my liability because that is the direct consequence of my act. वो मेरे act का direct consequence. So that kind of liability we are going to deal with. So there is hairline difference between strict liability and absolute liability. First, we are going to deal with strict liability. Like it has derived, it has been emerged from the case of Ryland versus Fletcher. Suppose I have constructed a pond on my land. Clear? A dam on a river. Due to excessive rain, the dam has broken. I would not be responsible because the rain was excessive. That can be considered as an act of God, and that was natural use of land. The difference between strict liability and absolute liability is one of them. In strict liability, there is natural use of land. In absolute liability, there was no natural use of land. Like we can construct dam over the river. There is no problem in that. So we have constructed dam due to excessive rain. The dam has broken and the house of a person just collapsed due to that water. But now we are going to consider other thing, like a pond was constructed by me over the mines of someone. Like there was coal mine and the water started to enter in the coal mines of that person. So who shall be responsible? I will be responsible. There is no reason to deny my liability because it was not act of God. It was direct consequence of my act. The same happened in the case of Ryland. The Fletcher has built a pond over the mines of Ryland, and due to the leakage of water, the coal mines, the mines of Ryland just submerged with the water. So he was incapable of running his business. There was a loss on the part of business. Business के part पर completely loss. So that is the strict liability. That is strict liability. That means what are the components of strict liability? Damage is the direct consequence of the wrongdoer. जिसने भी गलत किया है उसके एक्ट का डायरेक्ट कॉन्सिक्वेंस. इट इज द डायरेक्ट कॉन्सिक्वेंस ऑफ द wrongdoer. So that means the exceptions are not prevailing. Exceptions भी prevail नहीं कर रहे. That means there was no act of God, there was no act of third party, there was no any statutory authority. Clear? The plaintiff was not even the wrongdoer. So that kind of thing, if they are happening, then it will become, the person will become strictly liable. Strictly liable. And do remember one more thing, that in law we are having two kind of law, codified and uncodified law. But law of tort is kind of uncodified because every right cannot be codified. We cannot write every right. हम हर किसी right को generalize नहीं कर सकते. We cannot write every right. So there may be violation as per the modern society. Like earlier there was no fundamental rights, but after the commencement of Indian Constitution in 1950, we got so many fundamental rights, like right of personal life and liberty. It's a very comprehensive right. बहुत comprehensive right है वो. तो उसका violation में बहुत सारी चीजें हमारे सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने add on कर दिए. Supreme Court has added so many things in that. Even the privacy is also considered as a right under it. So strictly liable, that person would become strictly liable. So strict liability has emerged from the case of Ryland versus Fletcher. Similarly, so many things have been emerged from the case law. The case law. Now we are going to deal with absolute. Before absolute liability, I am just recalling the defenses. First one is voluntary non-fit injuria. That means the person who has consented for the harm will not be eligible to get the compensation. We have discussed about so many things about it. Like we have rescue cases and non-rescue cases. It will not apply in rescue cases, while it will apply in rescue cases that I have already discussed in detail. Plaintiff himself is a wrongdoer. Private defense, necessity, inevitable accident, act of God, mistake. And which kind of mistake? Mistake of fact only. Mistake of fact. Because ignorantia juris non executat. Ignorance of law is not an excuse. Statutory authority, like I have given you the example of frisking done at airport. Person was touching that particular person to just make it sure that he is not carrying some illegal object with him. So that frisking was done under statutory authority. That it was then it was allowed. So in strict liability, the benefit of this exception would be given. But in absolute liability, in absolute liability, benefit of exceptions will not be given. Will not be given. Like we have MC Mehta versus Union of India's case, Petroleum Gas Leak Tragedy, Union Carbide Corporation versus Bhopal Gas Leak. So many things are there. So mathematically, absolute liability will be equal to strict liability minus exception. That if we deduct exceptions from strict liability, it will become absolute. Like I have given an example in the beginning of the class. Like I have brought crocodile on my land, and that crocodile run away due to any reason. Like if there was flood, and due to flood that crocodile just come out on the road and he just killed 2 or 3 persons. Can I ask to get the benefit of act of God? Definitely the answer would be no. So first thing is that unnatural use of land. And second thing, crocodile is a hazardous thing. So bringing hazardous thing on land. And that is non-natural use of land. Third, and that escape of that thing from the premises of the defendant, तो डिफेंडेंट के प्रीमाइस से बाहर चला गया. Now you are already aware about plaintiff and defendant, so I am not taking so much emphasis on that, but still I am making you clear. Like already we have discussed injuria sine damnum and damnum sine injuria. That means legal injury is necessary, and the person by whose act legal injury is happening is become defendant or wrongdoer. And technically we call him to be tortfeasor. Like someone has wrote a statement targeting at me. That statement is totally false, and just it is there to bring down my image in the society. That is the wrong act of someone. किसी का wrong act है वो. So I would sue him. I will file a case against him to get the compensation, to prove that the person is wrong. So that's why it's the wrongdoer. He has broken his duty. I will just make you sure there is two kind of sense. Common sense and civic sense. What is very difficult to have? Civic sense. Common sense is common in all. It is common in all. If we are traveling in a bus and we are sitting on the first seat, and somehow due to bad health of us, we feeling that we are vomiting in few seconds, so we will go to the last seat and we'll be vomiting from there. That is common sense, because that will not causing any damage to the passengers who are traveling in the bus. Otherwise, if the person is vomiting from the first seat, and the clothes of every passenger would get dirty, because due to the direction of the bus, and you are sitting on the first. But what happened to the person who is just traveling on the road? That is breach of civic. We are not following our civic. In plane, we got a vomiting bag usually, because during takeoff and landing of the plane, a person might get vomiting. So just to fulfill that civic duty, those people are giving you a vomiting bag. That is the fulfillment of civil duty. That is civic sense. If someone is causing harm to others, then that harm should be legal one. For that, we have Ashby versus White case of polling officer that we have already discussed while we were discussing the sign demnum and demnum. Here we had Gloucester Grammar School. So the liability depends upon the act of the strict liability we have discussed, absolute liability we have discussed. Now we are going to deal with the difference. Liability arises from non-natural use of land, and it is due to hazardous activity by an enterprise, like handling of hazardous products, like pesticide, insecticide. So many things are being manufactured. There are so many poisonous gas, and it may be non-natural or natural use. I will cover both the things. It may be non-natural or natural. Like I have given you an example of pond. The person has constructed pond. That was a natural use of land, but it was over the mine. That's why it has become non-natural. It is not supposed to have the pond constructed over a mine. Strict liability is subject to general defenses. Act of God, act of third person, plaintiff is wrongdoer. Suppose, like for an example, a poisonous plant was growing in my house, and its branch is just moving in the neighbor's house, and the horse of neighbor just consumed it, and he died. It died. I would be absolutely liable. I would be absolutely liable, because it's a hazardous substance that has been brought or grown up on my land. Similarly, I have just I'm using some thing to prevent the insect in the wheat, and I have just placed that in the drum of wheat. Some trespasser, that the person who is unauthorized to come on my land, he just come and he opened that box, and he took out that particular substance that was poisonous in nature, because it was there to just kill those insects that may harm the wheat. So he just consumed it and he died. So who would be at the fault? The person who just consumed it, because it was the plaintiff was wrongdoer. Someone is not supposed to open that. Even he was the trespasser. Even he was the trespasser. So that's why strict liability is subject to suppose that thing was placed at my wall and someone has just consumed it, then I could have become strictly liable. because that was negligence on my part. I have just placed it at a place from where anyone can use it. Then I could be strictly liable. I could be strictly liable. And there is no defense, not as such defense. I have given you example of crocodile and this poisonous plant. Apart from it, suppose like you might have seen the electricity poles and transform. They are fenced now. They are fenced. Why they are fenced? Because if someone touches that transformer, so there would be no benefit of acceptance. It was mass negligence on the part of electricity department. That's why they have fenced it. They have fenced it. Similarly, you may see the sewage main holes. They are covered. Because they are on the road, if someone fell in it, we cannot say that the person was unaware that the sewage main hole is open. No benefit of exception shall be given in case of absolute liability. Here the substantial damages are awarded, and here the damages that are substantial, that means they are directly associated with the act, as well as they are just exemplary. That means they are just associated with it. That will be given to him. I will be giving some example of it also. Like some poisonous gas is consumed by a person and it was released. He consumed it because it was released by an enterprise that was just manufacturing it. Now the doctor have told that there would be infertility or lack of memory to him. The direct damage is that he became unconscious or unconscious for some few days, but now he is incapable of reproducing and incapable of just having good memory. That damages are also associated with the act. So in absolute liability, those damages will also be given. That is the difference between absolute liability and strict liability. We have discussed already a lot about it. As per the recent pattern of CLAT, we are going to discuss some. So first of all, I am just rounding up the things that we have discussed. We have discussed strict liability and absolute liability, as well as the difference. Which one is advanced version? Absolute liability is the advanced. Which is having less chance of defense? Absolute liability is having less. Which kind of law? The law of tort is, it is uncodified. Uncodified. That means a law that is running on the judicial precedents. Judicial precedents. That means we were discussing about strict liability. Then I have to quote the case that was Ryland versus Fletcher. That means it is a case that has been decided already by some court. That are known as precedents. They are known as judicial precedents. So it is uncodified law. Why it is uncodified? Because every right cannot be bring in a book. We cannot define the limits to the right. Now we are going to deal with the question. So a passage of 450 to 500 word would come. Out of that, 4 to 5 questions would be asked. So I'm going to deal with the questions and passage as well. Hazardous substance. What is hazardous substance? That is hazardous for the existence of one being. That's why they are. But they are necessary for modern industrialized society. We cannot deny. So like insecticide, pesticides, chemical fertilizers. These are creating so much problem, but still they are very useful. They are necessary. If we are considering their outcomes, so cancer is the biggest outcome. Might have heard there is a train that is named as Cancer Express that is running from Bhatinda to Bikaner. Because it is mostly it is carrying cancer patient. And why that cancer is spreading at a very high pace? Because the water that is being used over there is contaminated one. And how it is contaminated? Due to agricultural runoff. Because the farmers are putting fertilizers, insecticide, pesticides on the land, and that is washed away by the rain, and then it met with the rivers, and that rivers water are being consumed in the Bhatinda and Ganganagar area. So that is creating so much problem. So Indian industry is engaged in generation using and discarding of toxic substances. Like you might have heard that the water that is coming from Punjab is contaminated. It is having toxic substances. So to make the human life easy, we have to just be careful in handling with these hazardous substances. So what we are getting that these hazardous substances are necessary. The government cannot ask to ban them. Ban तो नहीं हो सकता. There are so many man-made disasters. Why they are man-made disasters? Because there was mishandling of them due to carelessness of that person. That hazardous substance has come out of their premises. If we see the end of World War II in 1945, so we found two cities were completely destroyed by US. Clear? It may be in the form of atom bomb or it may be in the form of chemical or hazardous substance. So these are posing a great threat to the upcoming human generation. Like if we considering the liability of America, it was criticized that Japan was about to surrender, but they have dropped two bombs. Why they have to drop two bombs? Just to prove their efficacy, just to prove their superiority in the world, that they are superior. So they should be considered absolutely liable. I'm not using strictly, absolutely liable. They cannot deny if we have mistaken somewhere. It was act of someone else. It was act of God. It is clearly an absolute liability on the part of them, and it can cause an environment damage. Clear? So there is a question. The question arises how far such kind of activities that in the present world is carried on by the corporations can be regulated and checked, and to what extent the liability of such bodies should be. What they want to fix? They want to fix the liability. Why they want to fix the liability? Because there were several incidents in which hazardous substance got released from some industry or some factory, and it caused harm to a mass society. And still those cases are not fully disposed by the judiciary, because for the compensation we have to go civil court. There are two nature of cases: civil cases and criminal cases. In criminal cases, the punishment would be given, while in civil cases, compensation would be. Tort is a civil wrong, so the case would go in civil court. So India has already witnessed Union Carbide Corporation. तो भोपाल गैस लीक ट्रेजेडी बोलते हैं. वी आर कंसीडरिंग नेमिंग इट टू बी भोपाल गैस लीक ट्रेजेडी. Methyl isocyanide escaped from the Union Carbide Corporation, causing death of 3,500 people. But it was more than that. It was more than that. So here we have to catch the theme of the passage. First, it is just considering both aspects, strict as well as absolute. They are just there to fix the liability of the enterprises who are handling with hazardous substances. How to fix the liability? How to just bring them in a bracket from there they can have the definite liability. Because these 3,500 people were died due to the leak of methyl isocyanide. But studies suggest that toll was close to 8,000. Means the deaths were underreported. The question that arose with this incident was regarding the liability of UCC. The same time, regarding the adverse environmental impact that similar industries handling the hazardous substances. Like there are two kind of things. First one is proactive thing, or second one is reactive. So here the view of our system is reactive. They were not proactive. We know that in modern society, production of hazardous substance is necessary. But we were not considered this thing. What happened if it could have escaped? अगर ये escape हो जाता तो क्या होता? हमने ये पहले नहीं सोचा. We have started thinking after Bhopal gas leak tragedy. The Bhopal gas leak tragedy case. So it made so many development in Indian legal system. Like अगर हम बात करते हैं, so we are not proactive, we are reactive. Even you might have heard about the Nirbhaya case. A girl was gang raped in a moving bus in Delhi in the year 2012, and she died after it. After that, so many changes in our criminal justice administration system took place in IPC as well as in Indian Evidence Act. So many changes have took place. So whenever a big incident took place, then there would be change in legal system. The transition from the rule of strict liability to of absolute liability. That means this transition is caused by judiciary. Sri Ram gas leakage case. It was pending. That is famously known as oleum gas leak case. Sri Ram fertilizer case was there. It occurred in 1984. So that has made strict and stringent rules for the people who are dealing in hazardous substances. Who make these rules? These are made by legislature. You are already in class 11th and 12th, so you are not supposed to you are supposed to know the meaning of legislature. Legislature, that branch of government that is engaged in making the laws. And how the laws are made? They may get public input, or they may be appoint a committee. They may appoint a committee, like committee or commission. If we talk about the biggest amendment in our constitution, that was 42nd amendment. To note it down, because that question is coming again and again. 42nd amendment in 1976. This is considered as mini constitution. This is considered as mini constitution. That was brought on the recommendation of Sardar Swaran Singh Committee. Sardar Swan Singh Commission. And side by side, I am also preparing your legal GK because some straight away questions would come in your GK and in the legal GK part that also be covered by me, some portion of that. Don't worry about that. This amendment also introduced fundamental duties in our country. Sardar Swan Singh Committee has given a comprehensive study result to Miss Indira Gandhi, and these amendments have been brought there. So, what is the meaning of hazardous substance? So, don't suppose that which section of Environment Protection Act 1986 defines the meaning of hazardous substance. If this question is coming, lucky. Directly you are finding the answer. But don't expect, because they are not going to take the test of your English, they are going to take the test of comprehension. How you are comprehending the thing. Earlier the practice was to have the question in the form of principle and fact. Now there is a passage followed by certain questions. Any substance or operation which by reason of its chemical or physical chemical property or handling is liable to cause harm to human being and other living creature and plants. So it is dangerous to the environment. So in present study, we will analyze in detail as to what happened in Bhopal, what were the effect of this catastrophe had on the enviro legal scenario. So what were the effect of it? The strict liability has been converted into absolute liability. Second thing, stringent laws were enacted over there. Also, the issue related to the payment of compensation to the victim of the accident shall be considered, which till today has not met its finality in the jury. Even they haven't got the compensation. From 1984, you may consider the number of years. Till that process is not completed, there are loopholes. So, a student will definitely get the idea which kind of system is prevailing in our judicial society. It's not following the speedy process. Now we are going to deal with the question that is very different contention. I'm just bringing out the synthesis of this paragraph. This paragraph was associated with absolute and strict liability, hazardous substance, difference between strict liability and absolute liability. What is the need of hazardous substance? How to handle with that? What are the changes in our legal system after the Bhopal geese leak tragedy as well as Sri Ram fertilizer case? Clear? What is hazardous substance? And what happened if it escaped from the premises? And who would be responsible for the death of that particular 8,000 people? What is the main motive of the passage? Hazardous substance should be banned. What could be your answer? Yes or no? Definitely answer would be, so this is not going to be the motive. Because they are saying in the modern society we cannot expect that the hazardous substance could be banned. Because we had so many things like chemical fertilizer, insecticide, pesticide. Even we are using all out, good night at home. So what is written over there? Poison. Can we expect our life without them? Your answer would be no. So many things are there. Baygon spray. Hazardous substance must be dealt carefully. This may be the answer. Industry should not use the so A and C are similar. Both are not the answer. Hazardous substance should be dealt carefully. Why it should be dealt carefully? If it escapes, what is the meaning of dealt for handling? That means production, storage, transportation. These all three things are coming in daily. Because if it escapes, then the liability would be of that person who was handling with them. The passage is considering remedy in the form of compensation, imprisonment, moral responsibility. All of the above is the most appropriate answer for most of the students. And don't even try to be panic that we have to study so many words to solve 4 or 5 questions. So why don't we go directly to the question and find the answer in the passage? Never try that kind of practice, because so many things are written there. Even we will file hazardous substances so many times, so many places. So the passage was about the tort. They were asking about compensation. Compensation. Like in the last area, payment of compensation. Payment of compensation. Because the main remedy in tort is compensation. As per the passage, which liability is an advanced form of liability? I think you have to get the answer. You all are aware about the answer right now. Here was the answer. Just I am going to check it. So the answer, yes. Here it is. Here it might be, because we have to keep a pencil with us whensoever we are solving the question. Or you may say that we should have a close vigilance over. So basically, it is talking about absolute liability. It is talking about absolute liability, rule of strict liability to that of absolute. Absolute liability is then advanced version of strict liability. This question is an average question. I should not say that it is a very difficult or very easy. It's an average question. It's only for your practice. After that, we will be covering so many questions with the substantive area as well as with the questions. Suppose event happened due to the negligence of the government department. Then government. Now I'm just making you sure about two things. What is negligence? Negligence, that means breach of duty, and that breach of duty caused damage to others. Like you were sitting in a restaurant, you need so many things. Like first you need a hygiene, a portable water, wholesome food, so many things you require over there. But that person has just made a negligence in it. You may find so many cases of medical negligence. डॉक्टर अपने सर्जिकल इक्विपमेंट्स ही मरीज के पेट के अंदर छोड़ देते हैं. दैट इज द that is an example of negligence. What is going to be the responsibility of that? So you are aware about the concept of negligence, and I am talking about the functions. So state perform two functions: sovereign and non-sovereign. State, that means government. What are the sovereign functions? The functions that are closely and directly associated with the government, like police, army. Non-sovereign, you may say they're the commercial functions of the government, like running railways, airlines. So whensoever the functions are performed negligently, even they are sovereign or non-sovereign. Earlier the rule was there, if the sovereign function, in during performance of sovereign function, if wrong is caused to someone, there would be no compensation. But now the rule has been changed. negligence is performed even in performing sovereign function, then also the compensation would be given by the state. The government shall be liable, government shall not be liable, government should not indulge in hazardous substance, so should, suggestive, and never fall in a emotional dilemma or emotional trap. Emotional trap always creates a problem. Usually the answer that are containing shall, should, sorry, no, not shall, should, would, might be, ought to. These kind of options usually not be the answer for any. Good government shall not be declared liable in any case. No, like even in a current scenario, in current pandemic scenario, there were allegations on the government. The government has allowed so many activities that the government is not supposed to allow. So that has caused a spread at a very great pace. The government shall be liable because it all depends upon the end result. Suppose someone died in an accident due to the negligence of driver. Negligence is negligence. Either it is performed by a private bus driver or by a government or public transport bus driver. The gradual development in the law of tort through cases define law of tort to be a or an. Codified law, uncodified law are law which runs on judicial decisions, both B and C. So codified and uncodified, first of all, like codified law, if we are talking about like IPC, Indian Penal Code, Indian Contract Act, Indian Constitution, these are the codified laws. Uncodified, that means they are running on judicial precedent. So it is uncodified law. A law which runs on judicial decision, both. So answer both B and C. Every time we have to follow a judgment. We have to follow a judgment. We have to think what happened in that judgment. Because the thing that was not declared to be a right in any law has been declared a right by judiciary. Like privacy has been declared a right by the judiciary. Cases we are dealing with, Ashby versus White, that what happened, it is a case of injuria sine damnum. Injuria, that means legal injury without damage. Legal injury has happened. Sine, that means without. Damnum means actual damage. Actual damage, that means physical, mental, any kind of damage. So the compensation would be given. The judgment taken in case of Ashby versus White. From where we are deriving it? We were talking about strict liability. The rule came out from Ryland versus Fletcher case. So it is a law that runs on judicial decision, as well as it is an uncodified law. So answer both B and in passage we found so many places where the reference to the cases were given, whether it was Shriram fertilizer case or whether it was Union Carbide Corporation. So here I am going to sum up the things that we have discussed. Today we have discussed the general meaning of tort. Tort is basically a civil wrong. And the remedy for that is a case for unliquidated damage. Secondly, we have discussed the meaning of tortfeasor, a person who has committed wrong. Third, we have discussed the rule of strict liability. Strict liability and its exceptions. Exceptions, that means the places where the rule of strict liability would not. Like act of God. I'm giving you an example. Like I have constructed a pond on my land or a dam on my land due to excessive rain. And that rain was not normal. It was abnormal rain. The wall of that dam collapsed, and it caused so many or too much loss for the people who are residing in that vicinity. It is strict liability, but due to act of God, I would not be responsible. Then we have discussed about the rule of absolute liability. Absolute liability is nothing but an extension of strict liability. So if we deduct exception from strict liability or defenses from strict liability, then it will become absolute liability. Then lastly, we have discussed certain questions. How the questions are coming? Questions are coming in the form of passage. In the form of passages, the question. Passages would be of 450 to 500 words. So that's all that we have discussed in today's class. Hope everything clear to you. In case of any problem, kindly let me know. And do remember that the CLAT is now a comprehension base. And I would definitely bring so many questions as much as they are possible, and you will definitely find that the questions are maximum questions. And being a CLAT student, don't try to cram the things. They're not here to just cram so many sections. I'm just briefing you out the suggestive syllabus of CLAT for legal reasoning. Law of torts, it's a suggestive one only. You will find certain questions are coming from family law, certain questions are coming from international law. I would definitely let you know how to solve those questions. Law of crime, and third one is business law. Fourth one is constitutional laws, and fifth one is legal GK. This is the indicative slip. This is the indicative. And what is going to be your strategy? Just follow a good quality newspaper like the Hindu, or you can follow the Indian Express. Just follow that, so that will allow you to assess or go from the editorial. Usually you will find so many questions in sample paper are coming newspaper. I would be discussing them with also. Thank you so much everyone. Meet in next class.